Marketing can feel like this big, fancy, ambiguous field, but it's actually not. It's quite simple. And when you get some basic metrics down, you're able to contribute right away to your company's strategy and marketing analyses. And that's the point of today's video. In today's video, we're talking about all the most important marketing metrics that everyone should know. And we're gonna break this video down into two parts. First, we'll talk about the building blocks, things like spend, impressions, clicks, conversions. And these are nice things that are high level that we just need to track. In the second part, we'll talk about the ratios that are derived from these. And these aren't that complicated either. During this part, I'll talk about the importance of each of these ratios and then questions that you can ask when you're starting to dig into each one of these that will allow you to do some worthwhile analyses right away. And that leads me to two things that I should be upfront about. First, this video should not seem overly complicated. It is a simple concept, and in fact, most of what we talk about in marketing, and most of what I do, is relatively simple in terms of the math. After you interpret the math, that's how you move forward from there. So everything we cover today, it should feel pretty basic, and that's totally fine. And it leads me to the second point, which is every company, no matter Fortune 100, high growth startup, expert consultancies, whoever, everyone's using these same metrics. And the goal of this is for you to leave this video understanding what people look at in terms of analyzing the marketing, feeling confident that you can raise your hand and ask good questions in your next marketing meeting. And if you want to go the extra mile, knowing that these are the things that you should pay attention to when you're doing the marketing analyses. So with that in mind, let's get into part one and talk about the building blocks. And I call these the building blocks because it's just 4 high-level metrics. These are just absolute values. And by themselves, they don't really tell you the story, but it's when you start to pair these together or create ratios out of them that you can get a better sense of what's going on at a company. And the 4 things we're gonna cover are spend, impressions, clicks, and conversions. And I'll go through each of these one by one so that we're on the same page. Spend is gonna be how much the company spends. You can look at this as a total value, or you can look at this by channel. So if you're in a meeting, you can ask a question like, how much did we spend last month? And this isn't too simple of a question, and some of you may be thinking, if I ask that, would I get laughed out of a room? Absolutely not. In fact, some companies that I've worked with, they overlook this, and then at the end of the quarter or the end of the month or year, they have spent way more than they should have. So it's always good to just keep track of how much a company is spending relative to budget or relative to how much it's spent the week or month before. Next is impressions. And impressions is anytime someone sees your ad. So you know sometimes you go on Instagram and you'll see a cool product and then you'll click on it and that product will appear in your newsfeed like 10 times. Every time you see that product in your newsfeed or an ad for that product, it counts as an impression. Impressions are just anytime someone sees your ad. And this is very easy to track when it comes to digital marketing. It gets much harder when you're talking billboards or Super Bowl commercials. See, the digital marketing companies, they keep track of impressions for you, but when you get outside of digital marketing and out into the real world or with TV, it's just hard to know exactly how many people are watching a show or how many people are driving by a billboard in a specific period of time. Spending impressions are good because they'll tell you how much you're spending or how much people are seeing your ad, but clicks are the first thing that indicate intent. When someone clicks on your ad, it means they're interested in buying something. So we like to look at clicks as an absolute value because it's the amount of traffic that you're driving to your website. It's taking people off of these platforms and bringing them into your own webpage so that you have a chance to convert them. And that leads us to number 4, which is conversions. And conversions is when someone takes an action that we want them to. And this is generally on our website. So it could be an app download. It could be signing up for a service. It could be signing up for a demo. It could be buying a product. Believe it or not, we're gonna use these 4 building blocks, spend, impressions, clicks, and conversions, and that's gonna be the backbone for all the ratios that we create in part 2. So in part 2, we're gonna use these ratios to understand the marketing performance at a company. Now remember, this marketing performance is company specific. And what we're trying to understand is how the marketing is doing at our company. We're gonna look at how it's evolved over time. We're gonna create expectations based on the metrics that we're seeing. And maybe you can start to get a sense for how you're doing relative to the rest of the industry. But there are no silver bullet metrics. This is all company specific. So there's nothing that you're gonna learn from this video where you can take a metric and then go apply it to your business and say, we pass or we fail. It's company specific and it's all relative. And finally, I need to reiterate, every company is using these same metrics. So if you get good at these at your company, then you're gonna be able to walk into another company and contribute just as much. Yes, the result from all of this is company specific, but the analysis that you're doing is agnostic. You can go anywhere and produce these types of analyses when you get the different numbers. So let's keep that in mind and let's start breaking down our different metrics. Why don't we start by taking our first two building blocks, spend and impressions, and make a ratio out of them. Let's take spend and divide it by impressions. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna give us cost per impression. Using an example, you spent $100 on marketing and you get 10,000 impressions. Well, that comes out to a cost per impression of 1 cent. And that is a really small number to deal with. And this is the only nuanced thing that I'm going to talk about in this whole video. But it's widely assumed in the marketing industry that cost per impression is actually cost per 1,000 impressions. And we do this so that the 1 cent number becomes one that's much easier to analyze. So if we do $100 divided by 10,000 divided by 1,000, now you have 100 divided by 10, which means your cost per impression is $10. So again, that's the only nuanced thing, that a cost per impression is really spend divided by impressions divided by 1,000. This is important because it'll show you how expensive your audience is. It's much easier to think about this in terms of a couple different channels. So you're advertising on both TikTok and Facebook, and you want to know which one is more expensive. Well, if your cost per impression on TikTok is $5, and your cost per impression on Facebook is $50, then TikTok is 1/10 of the cost of Facebook. You may be thinking, okay, well, I need to move all of my money over to TikTok. And that is not the case. Remember, there's a bunch of metrics that we need in order to place how good this is performing, and that's just one data point, but it is an important data point to look at how expensive an audience is. So thinking about questions you can ask during the analysis phase. Well, first, I'd think about what are the CPMs by channel. I do think that understanding how expensive audiences are, both across channels like Facebook and TikTok, and even within Facebook. So if you're targeting based on interests, you can see which audiences are more expensive. That is a really important thing. Next, I'd follow how your CPMs have changed over time. So a lot of times people don't really change their audiences that much, which means in theory, your audience should stay the same price. If we're on Facebook and we're targeting people who own dogs, and our CPM has been $10 since last January, tracking that over time is going to give an indication of whether the audience has gotten more expensive, less expensive, or the same. So looking at CPM, I think right away, understanding how expensive audiences are across different marketing channels, and then understanding how audiences have changed in price over time. Those are two really important things that you can start looking at right away. Now, if we take our equation and we swap out impressions with clicks, now we have spend divided by clicks, and that's gonna get us CPC, cost per click. Cost per click is one of the most popular terms that marketers like to use, and it's how much it costs to bring someone to your website. And this is so important because as you're looking across channels or you're looking at performance over time, you wanna see how the cost has changed to bring someone to your webpage. And we'll go back to that example from earlier, which is TikTok has a $5 CPM versus Facebook having a $50 CPM. And it's really important to know which audience is more expensive, but now let's say that TikTok has a $5 CPC and Facebook has a $2 CPC. Even though Facebook's audience is significantly more expensive, it actually drives people to your website much less expensively than TikTok does. So in this case, you now have two different data points. One is how expensive the audience is, but the other is how expensive it is to drive clicks from your audience to your site. And if you're analyzing this, I think it's completely fair, similar to cost per impression, to look at things like CPCs over time. When your marketing metrics start to go off the rails, a lot of times people will start to dive in looking at what's happened to CPCs over time, or has our traffic gotten more expensive? Even though we're dealing with relatively small numbers, you're talking something like $1 to $1.50, you might be thinking to yourself, 50 cents isn't that much extra to pay per click, but it's actually 50% more. So if you were advertising with $10,000, getting the same amount of clicks will now cost you $15,000. And that is a very significant difference. Even worse would be driving less traffic to your site on the same amount of budget. I think it's also important to look at CPCs by channel. To the point from earlier, TikTok, Facebook, looking at just the audience expense will not tell the whole story. You actually want to see who's driving the most traffic to your webpage. So CPC, super important to look at, both to give you a clue to how the business has evolved and also to see if there are certain opportunities that exist across the different marketing channels where you can deploy marketing dollars and drive more traffic to your site. We've talked about how expensive our audience is, and we've talked about the cost per click, but now we need to talk about ad effectiveness. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna take clicks and divide it by impressions. This gives us our click-through rate. And click-through rate is how many times people click on our ad. If you think about TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, those companies charge you based on impression. So if you have an ad with a higher click-through rate, it means you're gonna get more clicks for the same amount of money. Your advertising is performing better with a higher click-through rate. This is a very slippery slope because you can create ads that generate super high click-through rates, but they're nonsensical or they're just clickbait. So we wanna strike the balance between a good ad that advertises our product well and also has the highest click-through rate possible. Ways that you can analyze this right away. First, you can look at click-through rates over time. You can see if your ads have improved or declined in terms of performance. And next, I think it's really important to look at click-through rates of various ads. So generally you're running more than one ad at a time and they'll have different click-through rates. And we can learn if there's one ad that is more effective than another by just looking at this metric. And finally, and this is, I think, really important, if there are different products that you're showing and they generate different click-through rates, then understanding which products produce the higher click-through rates is great. I'll use an example of gym bags. Let's say you have an ad that has a gym bag that's one solid color, and you have one that has a nice loud pattern. Well, if the nice loud pattern is generating clicks at like 5x the rate of a solid color, not only are you learning that that ad is more effective, but you may also learn that people just want that product more. So you can learn quite a bit from click-through rate. It's very helpful in understanding how people are responding to your ad, but it is also dangerous because it can be manipulated quite easily. The last three metrics we've covered deal with getting people to the site, but it doesn't talk about the main reason why we are advertising, which is conversions. So the next two that we're gonna focus on deal with how effective we are at getting people to take the action that we want them to on our webpage. Again, we're gonna use the example of this YouTube channel. If I wanted to get you to subscribe and I created a video where the thumbnail was very clickbaity, something like you can win $1 million from watching this video. Sure, I might generate a lot of clicks, but I wouldn't expect a lot of subscribers. So as you think about the whole marketing funnel, we need a lot of impressions. We want people to click on the ad, but we want people to click on the ad who have intent. And then when they actually get to our website, we want to try to convert them or get them to take the action that we want them to. So let's get into those next two metrics. So the next metric we're going to talk about is a really important one. It's cost per conversion. Some people refer to this as CPA, some refer to it as CAC. I like to call it cost per conversion or CPA. And this is spend divided by conversions. Now, this is such an important metric because it deals with how we're doing relative to our marketing goals. Let's say we sell a $10 product and we make $4 in profit from that product sale. We've talked with our company and we've decided we're willing to spend all the way up to that $4, so the entire profit, to bring in more people. Well, right away, if we know that our cost per acquisition or cost per conversion is $10, we are not hitting our goal, and we can reason that we are actually losing $6 per conversion because we know that we make $4 and we're spending $10, so we're losing $6 every time someone buys something. A nice thing about CPA is it's not dealing with just the top level like cost per click and click-through rate are. It's dealing with the entire product funnel, and it can give us a sense immediately if we're on the right track or if we're way off the mark. So when you get into conversions, what's different than CPC is you're no longer only dealing with marketing, right? Like people can convert on your website who don't come from marketing. And a lot of times agencies will sneak all of those conversions into the metrics to make things look better. And that'll be blended CPA. So if you do 100 conversions from marketing, but you do 900 conversions just from people already knowing your product, there's a big difference. If you're spending $10,000, in the latter case, if you're looking at blended, it'll look like you're doing a $10 CPA because you're gonna do $10,000 divided by 900 organic conversions and 100 paid conversions. But if you're only looking at paid and you've still spent that $10,000, now your CPA is $100. And this is huge because if you set CPA goals of $10, then technically the agency would be hitting them. But if you set them at that $10 and you're only looking at non-branded conversions or just paid conversions and you're at a $100, it means that your marketing is way, way, way off the goals. So you needed to make this distinction right away, blended or non-blended conversions. The next thing I would ask is which channel has the lowest CPA? So assuming we're not looking at blended conversions and we're looking at just paid conversions, you can look at CPA by channel. You can see TikTok CPA, you can see Facebook CPA, Google CPA, and across all of those, you want to get to the bottom of which channel has the best cost per conversion, because in theory, that's where you're going to invest more money. The last metric we're going to look at is conversion rate, and this is conversions divided by total clicks. And this is really useful when looking at the strength of an audience or the rate at which people take the action that you want them to on your webpage. I think when you're doing analyses for conversion rate, it's important to get to the bottom of whether you have a website problem or an audience problem. And you can do this when you start looking at the conversion rate in the landscape of the entire marketing portfolio. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're advertising across many different channels like TikTok and Facebook, and you have a high conversion rate on one of those channels and really bad on another, well, maybe that one channel is just really bad and you shouldn't be advertising on it. If you have a low conversion rate across all of your advertising channels and you're trying different audiences and you're trying different ads and you still just can't get anyone to take the action that you want them to on your webpage, then you might have a web page or a product problem. So conversion rate's really helpful because it's a great indicator of if the audience that you're bringing is effective or if your whole marketing funnel is effective. And when it's off, then it's usually a sign that you need to start digging into if it's the audience or if it's the website or even if it's the product. So a super useful, helpful metric, especially when in the context of the entire marketing portfolio. Okay, I lied. I know this video has been so dense and we've talked about so much information, but there is one last metric, and this is the closest thing to a silver bullet metric right now, and that is ROAS, return on ad spend. This is total revenue divided by total spend. And this is just so important because when you're dealing with the two highest level numbers, revenue and spend, there is no hiding. Agencies can manipulate cost per acquisition, cost per click, click-through rate, all these different metrics can be manipulated. ROAS cannot. You're dealing with just, hey, is revenue going up and is spend going up? And if revenue is increasing slower than spend is, your ROAS is gonna go down. So if I were you and you're not super confident in marketing or you wanna know right away what's been happening or what the trend has been, the first thing that I would ask is for ROAS over the last 12 months, and you can analyze what's been happening at the company. Definitely don't sleep on ROAS. It's one of the first things I look at outside of just total spend with every company that I work with, so you can establish a benchmark and see how performance is going. Wow, that was a lot of dense information from YouTube. Congratulations if you're still watching. I know that this may feel overwhelming, and that's totally fine. I don't think that what we talked about was too complicated. I just think that we covered so much in such a short period of time. And if that is the case, don't worry. A lot of people feel that way. I've dealt with it with my MBA class. Take a beat, come back to this video, watch it again, and I promise you over time, all of this will click. The original goal for this was for you to feel confident next time you join a marketing meeting to ask questions or contribute or add to the analyses. And I really hope that that's the case with all of this. As you watch this and as this clicks, it gets me excited to think that there are people out there with analytical horsepower who just need to know the lingo, and then they can be off the races in terms of adding value to their teams. And I hope that's the case with you. If you like this, please consider increasing my conversions and conversion rate by hitting that subscribe button. If there are more topics you want to see related to marketing, or you want like a part 2, a more advanced metrics, leave that in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.